I'm Jack Nichols and welcome to Home Motorsports.
He's going to break his world title.
Look at these two go.
He's going to do it. His first victory.
The World Championship is done. What a race it's been.
Hello and welcome to Spa-Francorchamps for the 6th round of the 2023 Formula SimRacing Pro Championship, the Belgian Grand Prix, brought to you with the help of our partner, VCO eSports. 2 weeks ago, NX27 driver Viktor Ivanov took his second victory of the season at the San Marino Grand Prix to extend his championship lead to 35 points over Burst Esports' Tom Oldenmenger, who was caught up in a colossal first lap accident on his way to 10th. Patrick Sevet placed second for Royal Blue, putting him just a point behind Oldenmenger, whilst George Zalagianis was third for Ground Effect, meaning he's now level on points with Team Iris's Loic Moynier for fourth in the standings, with both drivers 11 points behind Sevet. My name is Edward Hunter, and alongside me in the commentary box for qualifying and 35 laps of racing action is William Chadwick, along, of course, with broadcast director Cas Rietveld on cameras. So, Will, whilst Ivanov may be running away with the Drivers' Championship, we not only have a close battle for second behind him, but the fight in the team standings is very hotly contested also, as Royal Blue, our reigning champions in Pro, lead Team Iris by 22 points, and then Burst Esports are just 2 points back, and then NX27 another point adrift as well. So it's very, very tight in that battle for second. We've had 7 different teams finish on the podium in the first 5 races. So have you been surprised, Will, by the level of competitiveness we've seen across the first half of the season?
I think it's really clear to see how many drivers have won and showing how competitive this series really is, and it's going to be interesting again today. I think we could see a new winner again. Hopefully we'll get some good racing involved, and I think Spa is such a classic track. So many drivers have it as their favourite. I'm sure we'll see some good racing and maybe some surprises as well.
Absolutely. Spa always seems to have a few tricks up its sleeve, and I'm sure today will be no different. So behind our top 5 in the standings, we of course have got Gianni Lianos and a bunch of others as well, including Ivan Leonov, Stoyan Barbakov, Sergio Fletcher, and Cameron Roger in 10th, of course. So look for Cameron Roger, of course, almost ran out of fuel at the end of Imola, but was able to just about save it and hold on to 7th place in a bit of a heart and mouth, 6th place, sorry, I should say, in a heart and mouth finish. So I'm sure Cameron Roger will be looking to a bit more fuel in the tank on this occasion. But qualifying now is a few moments away, and it's going to be very, very important here, of course, not just obviously in terms of grid position, but also as we look at the calendar, we also got to consider the amount of true power that these drivers have got at their disposal, because they've only got a limited amount per lap, and they won't be able to use it the whole lap through. So it's going to take a bit of careful strategy and management to get the best qualifying lap here. Of course, we've got 3 rounds after this at Monza, followed by Suzuka, and then of course the finale in Sao Paulo at the end of in the middle of October, sorry. So it's 3 great races still to come, but 1 excellent track today. Well,
yeah, some classic tracks up and coming, like you say, that Monza race also on the weekend of, I believe, Formula 1 as well. And yeah, it will be interesting. It's our second race in only 14 days, and I think, like you say, a lot of classic tracks, a lot of opportunities. It will be definitely interesting to see how the drivers manage their electrical deployment. I could certainly see it being utilised at low speed, especially at the likes of turn number 1 down to Eau Rouge and Radion. So it'll be interesting to see how the drivers manage it, and I'm sure we'll see quite a difference across the board with when and where they use it.
Exactly. The big overtaking opportunities, of course, are going to be that 1 DRS zone down the Kemmel Straight. But we did see a few moves in the Academy race at Blanchimont and into bus stop chicane, most notably from Nandor Massa, putting a great move on the very, very final corner of the race for 7th position. So hopefully we get some good moves like that in Pro, and a bit less of the start line calamity that I think dominated a lot of the start of the Academy. And at the start of the Pro race in Imola, a little bit had a massive crash as well, as I mentioned, with Tom Oldenmenger unable to escape it, sadly. And Oldenburg was a bit unlucky. He had a wheel failure, I believe he fixed just at the end of qualifying. And then he got in an incident on the first lap, and so he was constantly fighting back throughout the whole day, pretty much. But hopefully, Oldenburg has a bit of a smoother run today, and he can be back at his best, fighting for the podium, as we know he's done several times this season already.
Yeah, and I think looking towards qualifying, just looking at who might perform, I'm hoping for Patrick Sevet today to finally break his duck of 2 seconds this season and get a win. It would give us another winner this season. So, I think it would be quite interesting to see that happen as well.
It definitely would. I think Patrick Sevet has been very, very impressive on several occasions this season. Those 2 second places very much to his credit now, but qualifying about to begin with everyone, including Patrick Sevet, we see on screen, lining up at the end of the pit lane. Of course, we have got a big fight, as I mentioned, in the Teams Championship, which Royal Bill leading in no small part thanks to the antics of Patrick Sevet, always able to get a decent score out of pretty much all the races he's been to. I think his worst result is like 9th or 10th so far, which shows you his consistency has been pretty solid. But like you say, the peak he hasn't enjoyed that first victory yet, and I'm sure if he keeps driving the way he's been driving, then it's only a matter of time. But he's unleashed now onto this 7-kilometer circuit in the Ardennes forests, of course. And it's really a absolutely lovely track. One of the classics, as Jess was telling me in the academy, it's been around since 1925 in real life. So largely predates the Formula One World Championship, of course. And in FSR, it's seen quite a few classics over the years. I believe Matthew Williams won here for Royal Blue last time we were here in Pro. And of course, he's moved up to World Championship since then. So the omens for Royal Blue, pretty positive on the whole. But we've got a whole new bunch of drivers here in Pro, all looking to make their mark this season. And Ivanov is the man on the roll at the present moment.
Yeah, and as you watch the drivers on their installation lap coming through famous sections of the racetrack, of course, Eau Rouge and Radion, named after the river, I believe, that flows below the track, or used to flow there at least. Maybe it's not there anymore. But yeah, you see your championship leader, Ivanov. Nice little, I swear he wasn't in that livery last time I came here, when I last commentated in Bahrain, but it's a very, very beautiful pink and blue and orange Netrex livery.
Yeah, well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You certainly notice it when it pops up on screen, I'll put it that way. And of course, Ivanov's teammate, Liam Howard, is in attendance today, which means we have 2 pink and orange Netrexes, Spa-Francorchamps. So I'm sure that is going to be, we're going to notice them every time they pop up on screen, even if they're long in the distance in the background, because you can't miss that pink and orange combo.
Well, we often have liveries that are very, very similar across sim racing, so I think it's nice to see something a little bit different. Full attack now for Patrick Sevet as he goes over the top of Radion down the Camel Straight and into the end of the first sector here at Spa. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what he's able to do. Of course, purple, as he would probably expect, given the people that have gone through at the moment.
Yeah, but quite a lot of others have gone through, and he remains purple as well, 29.099. So that's a pretty competitive first sector time. But of course, the track condition, 33 degrees. Oh dear. And that is not going to be ideal for Patrick because the rear wing is shorn off. So that's what happens when you get no-name corner wrong. And unfortunately, all that great first sector coming to nothing then, it will.
Actually, I think it started on the exit of the hairpin. You just saw him getting to power really early, spinning those rear tyres up, overheating them maybe a little bit, and then as soon as he turned into no-name, there's just no rear grip there, and that's very, very disappointing, I'm sure, for Sevet, as that opening sector of the lap was very, very good.
Absolutely, but it does open the floodgates for everyone. And of course, when you have a crash like that, you've always got to mentally reset yourself, go back to the pit lane, get back out in the 6 minutes that remain in the session, because it's a long lap here. If you crash and there's only 2 minutes left to go, it's going to be touch and go if you can get another lap in. But here comes Gianni Lianos in the Netrex, crossing the line now. So this is probably going to be one of our benchmark times, as Barbikov actually sets a 1:43.5, which was about the pole time in Academy, of course. So Barbikov actually setting a very, very competitive first run, just 3,500, ahead of Wesley Buchout. And Leonov gets himself up to third in the second of our free Netrexes, of course. I always forget Netrexes have got an extra driver now with Danny Van Den Eek pitching in. But But here is Viktor Ivanov then on his opening time. And of course, our championship leader, very keen to consolidate his advantage. But of course, 35 points in the lead. There's not a huge amount of pressure on Ivanov to make it 3 wins so far this season. But certainly, he won't want any of his title rivals to close in that 35 gap. He certainly wants to keep Olden Menga, Moinier, Sevet, and Zalagianis all at bay, because those 4 are basically the main threats to him at the moment.
Yeah, and Cameron Roger for Burst at purple in the first sector, fellow commentator. We've got to be cheering for him surely as well. But as we see Ivanov come to the line, will he go to the top? Maybe, not sure. Yes,
of course.
0.3 of a second. Wow.
As if it was ever in any doubt. Well, just under 4 tenths ahead of Stoyan Barbakov then. But as you say, here is not Cameron Roger, but his teammate Tom Oldenmenga, of course, second in the championship, just a point ahead of Patrick Sevet. And Oldenmenga has been looking to bounce back, very disappointed with how Imola went, but it's only 8th fastest then, 6 tenths down on his title rival Ivanov. Here is Cameron Roger then. His time in the first sector has been eclipsed, actually, by Loic Moinier in the Team Iris entry. Moinier, of course, recently made his debut in the World Championship, filling in at Visceral Esports for Darius Andre. Here comes Cam Roger. Where's this going to put him? It's only 10th, actually, so the final couple of sectors weren't as quick as I think he hoped, so he's a little bit slower than Tom Oldenmenga and Ard Erchan in the TX3. But Moinier, meanwhile, 44.9 in the middle sector. That's not too bad. He's still flying out there on his first flying lap, which by definition you'd hope it'd be a flying one. But Philippe Blanchimont, he goes, and then it's the bus stop chicane. It becomes so easy to miss your braking point, to lock up, as Moinier does there and demonstrates beautifully. Well, not beautifully for him, of course, but towards the line he comes, and is he going to be able to salvage a decent time out of the lap? It's going to be 14th fastest, so the final 2 sectors were where the time ebbed away there. So it's very easy to blow your battery deployment down the Kemmel Straight in that sort of first sector, but then you're sort of at a little bit of a disadvantage if others are using it in sectors 2 and 3, Will.
Yeah, exactly. And when we see these purple times in Sector 1, potentially that doesn't mean you've done a really good sector. It just means you've used more battery than everyone else. So it is obviously something that we do need to keep an eye on. And I think as we progress through this qualifying session, now only 3 minutes 20 seconds to go, it's all of a sudden coming quite to a close. So we'll have to see what others have got to put on the board and whether anyone can challenge Viktor Ivanov.
Yeah, while we were watching, by the way, Patrick Sevet. That's a great time there from the man we saw crash earlier, 1:43.154. I was about to say Wesley Buchout in 4th had set a pretty decent time there as well. A teammate, of course, of Loic Moinier. And here's the other teammate, Alex Lehoux, powering towards the line. Lehoux gets himself only up to 18th, unfortunately. But now Ivanov, he's got to fight for pole position here, because Sevet, as we've seen on a couple of occasions this season, has really turned up the wick in qualifying, and Ivanov is really going to have his wits about him here if he wants to get back into pole position.
If you just look to the bottom left of his dash there, you can actually see the delta. I'm not sure if that's absolutely correct, but what it does show is he's very, very close to setting a personal best sector, flipping between green and not green. So yeah, like you say, looks to be fairly correct. Pretty good through the first sector, a personal best. Very, very well hooked up into the second. Nicely to the inside, just letting the car go out on the exit through No Name, turns in nicely, uses the track all on the exit and down into the next corners.
Yeah, and while we've been watching this, Ard Erchan has set another great time, just 3 tenths behind our leading pair in the 1:43.4s there. So that's definitely great for TX3 that Erchan is back on form as Ivanov just gets a bit too far over the curb and spins into the wall there. So our 2 rivals making big mistakes then. And that is it for Viktor Ivanov. He's not going to be able to get out in time for another lap. So now it's down to Sevet versus Erchan. So that's a big moment for our championship leader there. For his sake, he's hoping that time is good enough to stay on the front row. He was hoping to be good enough for pole position. Well, that's out the window now, Will. And now this qualifying session turns on its head then as we look at Ivanov's teammate Liam Howard.
You would certainly hope that it would be good enough to keep him up near the sharp end. However, Howard is unable to really break that kind of 6 to 4 tenths bubble that we're seeing from, kind of 4th backwards all the way down to 14th. So it's very, very close in that mid section of the latter top 10 here. So it's going to be interesting to see what we have left from some of our drivers that are being able to perform a lap. Watching one of our drivers that may, with a few improvements, be able to creep into that top 5.
Yeah, Wesley Bucat, of course. Gained it in a little bit in Academy. He got a pole position at Imola, as we see him just twitching through there. He gained a little bit of a reputation in some of the lower as a bit of a, not just a qualifying specialist, but often if there'd be a misfortune, he'd work his way back up through the pack in Academy. And he's been a little bit overshadowed by Loic Moynier, but still finished in the top 4 at Canada earlier in the season. So Bucat has got some valuable points in the team's championship. Sadly had to retire from Imola after being involved in the first time incident. And again, the Iris cars have clearly got the brake bias maybe a little bit too far to the front, because they always seem to lock up into bus stop chicane. Across the line comes Bucat. He's going to get one last lap in, is he, or is this going to be the final one? And that's it. It's not quicker. So Bucat will do no better than 7th position now. So the battle for pole, it's between Sevet, Erchan, and maybe somebody else if they can get a better time in there. But I think this is looking very, very good all of a sudden for Patrick Sevet.
Yeah, and on board we go near for Patrick Sevet. Can he improve that time as he comes through the Brussels corner into what we like to call no name, or many other names across sim racing? We all seem to have a little bit of a go at naming it. And it looks to me like he's up on his time. If we look to the bottom left of his steering wheel, down through Puon, accelerating out into the next section. We've got Campos and Stavolo to come. Nice little entry there, getting to the curb, not riding it too much. Again, to the curb nicely. And as we come towards the end of the second sector, it's certainly looking very good for Sevet.
Yeah, and Moynier has launched himself up to 3rd ahead of Arda Erchan. As we see Leonov and Zalagianis down in 10th, also going quite quick as well. So keep your eyes out for those two, especially George Zalagianis, I think, who won here in Academy last season. But Leonov not able to improve on his lap time. So here comes Sevet then. Is this going to be the pole lap? Because I think either way, I don't think Erchan is going especially quickly. Might be able to get in front of Loic Moynier. Towards the line comes Patrick Sevet, and it's a purple time. There we go. So he consolidates his advantage by a few hundredths of a second over Victor Ivanov. And Zalagianis goes 3rd fastest. There we go. Brilliant lap then by the Greek driver to displace Loic Moynier right at the end. And this looks like Lehoux has found the wall somewhere at the exit of Blanchimont, I believe that is. So not ideal for him. He will start 20th. We see the Racing Pride logo on the side of the Iris, which is always great to see from that team. But very dramatic ending then. And we got all of our big championship protagonists, apart from Tom Aldermaker down in 12th in the top 4 then. Well,
yeah, and I've even would be counting these lucky stars there, because everyone, as you see your standings come up, started to kind of improve. We noted that it was about 3 to 4 tenths of a second. Everyone was kind of off Sevet's leading time, but yep, Ivanov just able to hold off by a tenth in 2nd place.
So let's go through our order from qualifying then. It's Patrick Sevet with his first pole position of the season ahead of Victor Ivanov. Then George Zalagianis with that late lap to 3rd, beating Loic Moynier. Stoyan Barbakov in the 2nd Royal Blue will start 5th ahead of Arda Erchan in the TX3. Then it is Danny Van Den Eet and Gianni Lianos in the 2 Net Rexes, with the top 10 being rounded out by Sergio Fletcher in the Sol Valet and Wesley Bucat for Iris. In 11th position, it's Ivan Leonov, followed by our man 2nd in the championship, Tom Aldermaker, who once again has given himself a lot of work to do in the race, qualifying mid-pack. Daniel Miganov is 13th. I think he's been promoted up to valet, so it's not the Sol Valet, as I said earlier. Apologies. But he is ahead of Liam Howard. Then it is Karen Roger in 15th. Kat Panizio, 16th for Super Venturi. Matt Tucson, 17th for Grand Effect, ahead of Kevin Morville and the other Super Venturi. Peter Knapp, filling in for Simon Frelick for Royal Blue, starts 19th ahead of Alex Lehoux. And then rounding out our qualifying order, it's Peter Vagapov in the TX3 and Mirko Mancini, who I believe also has a back of the grid penalty for his crash with Barbakov in Imola. So he's decided he will start at the back. Anyway, so there we go. That is the grid. And it's set up rather nicely. You predicted, Will, win for Patrick Sevet. And certainly that seemed to be a good omen for him, because he was able to get, despite that early crash, onto pole position. And he was able to sort of force Victor Ivanov into a mistake, which we don't see too often in the races, let alone in qualifying.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, really. It shows you how much confidence Sevet is clearly going into this round with. When you have a crash in your opening run of qualifying, it can knock you because you always want to get that kind of banker in, like you've mentioned. There's only, what do we have, 10 minutes of qualifying there, and not many laps our drivers were really able to get in. I think the average we saw was 3 full push laps. So when you've got that short of a time, not being able to get that first run in can really be a knock to your confidence, and it shows there how confident Patrick Sevet must be to be able to put it onto pole position in his second run and then just improve by about 300ths on his second.
Absolutely. And Sevet, if he can pull off a win today, it would certainly help him in the championship because, like you say, he's only 1 point behind Tom Oldermenger, who is 11 places further back on the grid. But Sevet has really got his work cut out to hold off Ivanov. He's got to hope that Zalagianis and Moynier can get involved in the battle. We saw Zalagianis and Moynier fighting each other in the early stages at Imola as well, with Zalagianis in the end coming out on top there. So in Pro, of course, strategy is going to be all important. So it's really a matter of how long can they get the harder tires to last, who's going to gamble on the mediums, maybe 1 or 2 even going for the softs as well.
Yeah, and that's something that we might end up seeing from the burst drivers. I imagine, like you say, they often give themselves a little bit of work to do from qualifying. So I think potentially they may be a little bit more suited to the race trim when we get to this race. Obviously, it's a very, very long race that we have here today. And when you get tyre strategies coming into play, battery management, I think we'll see potentially some of them moving through the field. Obviously, I'm going to be rooting for Cameron Roger.
Sure, so it'll be interesting to see Oldermenger and Rogers straight line speed down the Kemmel Straight, because that could really help them make their way through the pack if they're able to take advantage of that. But we are only a minute or 2 away, I think, from the starting grid forming up and our 6th round of the season getting underway. And of course, there is that close fight for second in the drivers. There is, of course, that massive fight in the team's championship, which Patrick Sevet will be desperate. Him and Stoyan Barbakov, both in the top 5 of Royal Blue. That is great news for them because they really need to consolidate the advantage that they have over Team Iris at the moment, with Moynier in 4th on the grid and his teammate Wesley Bukout just rounding out the top 10.
Yeah, and like you say, not long now to go until we get the cars onto the grid for what will be a very, very long race for these drivers, kind of full-length Formula race. I'm sure they're used to it, but certainly the mindset that you're kind of getting yourself into now as a driver, you're starting to think about what your strategy is going to be, think about everything that maybe you didn't go right for you in qualifying or did go right for you in qualifying, what you can then do from that position and what your game plan will be. I'm sure a lot of these drivers here today will be ready to make some moves, and I can't wait for the action to get underway.
Yeah, there we go. So as the grid lines up, I remember because I'll tell you something. Well, my first commentary in Pro was actually Spa, this very race last season, and I remember being really surprised that with the extra length of the race, that the Pro drivers basically were able to 2-stop the race, I think, in the end, because the tyre weight was really high that day. I thought they were all going to have to 3-stop, but they proved me wrong and made me look a bit silly. So I'm prepared to be made a fool of again here as the grid gets itself formed up, and the formation lap will not be far away. So let's hope that everyone can make that formation lap and we can get all 22 cars on the grid and ready to start.
Okay, so you see the drivers line up now, just ready for the start. Interesting to see some of the tyre choices on the left. Maybe Barbakov will be one to watch.
Yeah, and of course, tyre choices may update as the formation lap goes
Making
on.
me look
Even
silly
the first
now,
lap.
isn't it?
Yeah. So there we go. Looks like everyone at the moment is going to start on hards then, as Patrick Sevet leads the field away on the formation lap then. Of course, big moment for him in his championship, in his career, of course, first career pole position in Pro. And let's remind ourselves very briefly then of how they stand on the grid. Of course, it's slightly different liveries, I'm afraid, but Patrick Sevet is correct in the Royal Blue. We've got Victor Ivanov in the NX27, George Zalgianis third, starting in the second row, with Loic Moynier just behind him. Then in 5th, it is Stoyan Barbakov with Arda Ercan alongside him in the TX3. Then Danny Van Der Neet and Gianni Lianos in our 4th row, all Netrex 4th row. Row 5 is Sergio Fletcher and Wesley Bukout rounding out the top 10, ahead of row 6 of Ivan Leonov and Tom Oldermenger. He's got a lot of work to do today. Row 7 is Daniel Miganov and Liam Howard in the NX27, hoping to back up his teammate. Then is Cameron Roger 15th, ahead of Cat Panizio. And then, of course, in 17th, we have Matt Tucson in the second ground effect, just ahead of Kevin Morville. Peter Knapp making his debut in Pro for Royal Blue, ahead of Alex Lahou. So Peter Knapp will be able to get some big points here. Then our final row of the grid is Peter Vagapov and, of course, Mirko Mancini serving that grid penalty. So Mancini will be hoping to cut through the order in the last of the Royal Blues.
Yeah, now we see our drivers forming through this formation lap. I'm not going to comment on the tyres because it still may be making me look wrong, but I'll let that settle for the time being, and maybe we'll comment on it later. But if Royal Blue at the front have gone for mediums, it will be interesting to see kind of how that plays out. And yeah, I mean, I'm certainly excited for the race. Ambient temperature is 21 degrees, pretty pleasant day. Of course, the track being a little bit hotter than that. And yeah, I'd certainly love to be watching in the grandstands at Spa right now.
Absolutely. It is a little bit cooler than some of the previous races we've seen. Like Imola was at nearly 37 degrees track temperature, I think. But so that will have a little bit of an impact. But still, tyre wear, we are expecting it to be fairly a bit of a challenge, especially towards the end, if the Academy race was anything to go by. But there's our top three, Sevet, Ivanov, Zalagianis, just lining up on the grid, and the rest of the pack rushing in to join them. So let's hope we get a clean start. But Patrick Sevet, he will be hoping to lead away at the end of this first lap, take advantage of the extra grip potentially that those medium tires might have, if indeed he is starting on them. So I'm just got to hedge my bets like you will on terms of tire choice. But Mancini, once he slots in at the very rear of the field, we'll be waiting for the lights to come on, and then round 6 will be underway. The tension building then is the view from Moynier, and now Danny Van Den Neet, of course. Great to see him in action in the pro field. A great view as the lights come on then. So Patrick Sevet positions himself a little bit to the left. The light's about to go off, and we are racing at Spa-Francorchamps, and it's not a great start for Victor Ivanov. He does not able to get alongside Patrick Sevet into last source, although he tries at the apex. But it is Sevet that is going to lead on the long downhill run in through Eau Rouge and Radion, as we see Moynier trying to challenge Barbakov, who's made a great start and gotten up to 4th position. But Sevet, it's a dream start for him then, so he's just got to maintain this position, as Victor Ivanov has got George Zalagianis all over the back of him, and Moynier now trying to use some draft to get past Barbakov into Lecum. And Zalagianis was unable to get through, as was Moynier was able to jump Barbakov though. So there we go. It is Sevet, Ivanov, Zalagianis, Moynier, Barbakov as they go into Sector 2.
Yeah, and a good start there by all of our top contenders. It looks like Roger maybe had an issue. I've already jinxed him as he's lost the front wing, and that's a disaster for the start of this race for Cameron.
Yeah, you can't jinx him if it happens after you've said that though, but or before rather. But there we go. That looks like one of the valets of Miganov making a move on Peter Knapp near the back there, just through no-name corner there. So Knapp, dare I say, caught napping there a little bit on the first lap, and the valet taking full advantage there. So our two Academy graduates having a great fight near the back. Here's Fletcher, who's found a way past ahead of Wesley Bucat then up to 9th position, which is again crucial for valet, who've not been having a brilliant season so far in pro. And now Ivanov is all over the back of Patrick Sevet, so this is where he was saving his push to pass then, Will.
Yeah, and we saw a little bit of an attack down into Les Combes the first time by. This track obviously lends itself a lot to kind of draft trains, so as they complete the first lap, a little bit of battling in the background, feeling a bit of contact there between Barbakov and Moynier. It looks like they've been dicing places a little bit through this opening lap. I do expect to see some more moves down into Les Combes.
Here we go then. So another long straight that they've got to contend with. We could see once the DRS is activated, a lot of passes down the Kemmel straight, as we indeed saw in the Academy race about half an hour ago, of course, when that ended. But here they come then, and it looks like Fletcher is gearing up for another move on Leon and gets pushed onto the grass there. So Lianos was not to be trifled with whatsoever, as Fletcher found out to his cost there.
Potentially not expecting that move around the outside. Of course, it is advantageous to be around the outside into Les Combes, as you get the inside for the second part of the complex. certainly a bit of battling going on early. Drivers know that if they're not in the right position and they're able to make some moves early on, it might benefit their race pace and race stints massively towards the end of that.
So we're seeing a train already starting to form here behind Kevin Morville in 15th. He's got Lehu, who just had a little look up at the inside of him at Ravage, and here's Vagapov making a move on Lehu, actually. So it's pass or be passed, and Peter Vagapov from the back row of the grid has made a load of places up on these opening 2 laps. Absolutely flying is Peter on his return.
Yeah, and like you say, on his return, it's going to be interesting to see where he's able to get up to. Of course, we have seen in the past, drivers maybe not qualifying so well, but able to make up a lot of time and a lot of places in these races. Our top 5 remain the same. It doesn't look to be a breakaway for Seva as Ivanov races him close.
Yes, and the problem is if the mediums start to fade on Sevet, then if Ivanov can't pass him quickly, then Zalagianis may be able to take advantage here. Of course, winner in Silverstone. He's eager to catch up with Ivanov, make it 2 wins in his tally this season, whereas Sevet is desperately trying to hang on to his first. And then we've got Moynier, another previous winner this season, looking to double up. But yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult to navigate this. Barbakov and Sevet, they will have to pit earlier than these 3 people in between them. So that is really going to define their strategies here, as we see Sevet trying to weave out of the slipstream as DRS is now activated, and Ivanov is going to have a monster run into Lekum.
Yeah, and like you say, going to be on the outside. They almost make contact.
They do.
Into Ludwig. It was so close, and there's more contact behind.
Oh, and yet further there, Zalagianis and Moynier bang wheels then in the battle for third. I thought Zalagianis was going to be able to take advantage. Oh! And the 3 take each other out into Rivage, and that's gold dust for Ivanov because Sevet, Moynier, and Zalagianis all tangled there.
That was absolute carnage. I'm not even sure how that second crash quite happened, but like you say, it looked like maybe Ivanov had gone really, really deep into the con. Didn't expect Sevet to kind of hang it round the outside, and it all kicked off from there.
So unexpectedly, Barbakov, as we see Fletcher and Lianos going side by side in the Fanier chicane. Oh, that was tough stuff from Sergio Fletcher, but he has to complete the move as they approach Paul Frere. And that is Fletcher past Moynier, of course, who's still suffering damage, I think, from the accident with Sevet and Zalagianis. Zalagianis, the big loser there, down to 13th. But wow, I feel that's going to be a very, very controversial moment between that trio. And I think that was a visual illustration there of how Ivanov is. Oh, big crash. Who was that? Was that Moynier?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like you say, dropping down the order now, and potentially some of that residual damage just as you come round the flat out left of Blanchimont. I'm surprised that car's still running with, what, 2 wheels? 3.
Oh, but it doesn't look fun to drive whatsoever, so he's going to bump his way through the wall into the pit lane there. But that was Moynier being caught out by the damage there. So let's have a look at the replay of the triple crash then. This is going to be a bit frightening, isn't it, Will?
Yeah, and let's have a look. Just, wow, I mean...
Moynier, a bit of an innocent victim there, I have to say.
So,
this is Sevet. This is Sevet then, they're on board. It's because he's got Barbakov's name on the halo. But
yeah, it's almost like he's relinquishing the position, and then you say, that they don't expect the checkup behind, so it therefore means that you just... It's a bit of a mess, really, but it's hard to blame it on anyone, really.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there, because Jonas was squeezed in the middle. Moynier was minding his own business on the outside, and then Sevet sort of had these 2 people. There we go, and that's the moment where Moynier lost it on the curb, just pushing that a little bit too hard, and that is a big blow to Iris's team's championship as well as Moynier's quest to gain ground in the drivers' championship. But this is really put everything to the advantage of Victor Ivan, and that's going to be a long repair job if Moynier can even get back into the race.
Yeah, it must be race over, really, for Moynier. We're watching more battling here towards the end of the second sector at Spa.
That's more moves by Vagapov. We go past Alex Lehu then for 11th position.
Say some of that race pace that some of these drivers may have focused a little bit more on, considering the length of these races, perhaps coming into play here. Of course, a bit of carnage has made it so it's very interesting for us here today. But as you come down into another driver on the curb in the background.
Oh dear, this is getting in a bit of a demolition derby. It's a race of attrition, isn't it, Will? And Mancini from the very back of the grid sadly getting into another major accident for 2 races in a row, and that's pretty much fatal to his chances of scoring good points in this race.
Yeah, and like you say, I think we initially thought it might have been Moynier with damage, but it's potentially just this corner, you know, running a little bit. Wow, that's so easy to do, and there's no saving that at that speed.
Yeah, and he was in the wake of the Super Venturi in front of him, wasn't he? I believe that was Cat Panizio was fighting with. But so yeah, really unlucky for Mancini and Moynier. Let's hope we don't see any more cars self-destructing like that before this race is over, because it really seems, with all the battling that's going on, it's gotten very, very heated all of a sudden. And indeed, there we go. More battling as they exit Lake Coombe.
Oh, another driver almost putting it into the Armco there, and
that was Lahoo there, just saving that one.
Yeah, and it's a good save in the hindsight of things of looking at it. And I think Vakapov has dropped back quite a bit, because I'm sure we saw him up in 11th not too long ago.
We did, and amazingly, Tom Oldenmengo, who didn't have a great first lap, was down in 13th, has gotten up to 9th now. It really shows you can take advantage of all this squabbling. So here we go. This looks like oh, Vakapov spun it. That was the regen. He was trying to regen energy at La Source, and that was what mixed up the entire order in this battle for 11th, essentially. And yeah, Vakapov just the rear axle just locking on him, and very little he could do at that stage. We saw that happen in the test races as well pre-season. That's really a dangerous corner if you get the regen wrong there.
Yeah, potentially some damage to those participants there, so could be interesting to see whether they drop off or who's able to have benefited from that. But very mixed up order here after 6 laps. We nearly see a mistake down into the bus stop chicane.
Has Ivanov pit, by the way? I think he has, because he's dropped down the order, and it's now Barbakov leading. In fact, there we go. So, Ivanov lost his front wing, and Zalagianis was pitting ahead of him there. So it's really kicked off. And so that was what happened. They were lapping some of the back markers, and Zalagianis and Ivanov, that was Howard, sorry. So that was Zalagianis tripping up over Liam Howard. And I think for some reason, Leonov is also kit trouble. Not Leonov, sorry, Ivanov. That's not the last time I've made that mistake, that's for sure. But Ivanov has dropped down to 10th in the order. So this mixed up race is now all of a sudden falling into the lap of Stoyan Barbakov, who's got Arda Erchan just a second behind him. And Sergio Fletcher, amazing in the valet, who started way down the order, just inside the top 10, is now 3rd.
Another one, I don't know if that's
But
Ivanov,
that must be Ivanov, yeah, losing it at Lake Coombe then.
But that's another incident there, so potentially why he got dropped down the order in the first place.
So this is Erchan making the move up the inside, just tags the rear wheel, so he spun Ivanov around. So Victor Ivanov, I'm sure, is not going to be best pleased with Arda Erchan after that one.
It's almost a battle of survival, really, at the moment. I know we've got these deployment and a lot of DRS able to be used, but you know, you've got to be thinking, if you're a driver in this race right now, if you're just keeping your nose clean in this opening section, you'll be benefiting yourself massively towards the end of the race, because it seems some of the people that have made such moves up the field in this opening stage of the race. You know, I look to Fletcher, who's up quite a lot. Ivanov obviously down quite a lot, we see, of course, with a new front wing now, at least. So, oh no, that was Howard, wasn't it?
I think Howard's out the race, unfortunately.
Yeah,
so only one NX27 still going well, and that's Ivanov.
Yeah, so obviously that's why we see Ivanov down the order from that spin that he had at the Com. And now, potentially, we have a battle for the lead as the medium tyres drop off.
Yeah, Barbakov under real pressure now. He's stayed out of trouble, done well to keep his nose clean, and he saw exactly what happened to Ivanov a few laps ago. Needs to make sure he doesn't get taken out, but Arda Erchan is through with the DRS, and there wasn't a lot that the medium shod Royal Blue of Barbakov could do to keep him at bay there.
Yeah, and like you say, this DRS zone, you know, you're coming straight out of the first corner, La Source, and you've already got a large toe advantage all the way up through Erosion Radion, and when you open that DRS, it just gives you such an advantage to be able to pass. So it's probably what's causing a little bit of our carnage here today as we look a little bit further back to Tucson in the field.
Yeah, Matt Tucson, who's best result this season, I believe, was Spain, where he finished in the top 10. So he's the second ground effect. Now, with Zalagianis hitting so much trouble, the incident with Howard, he's got to get himself into the top 13 if he can in this battle with Peter Vakapov. But, of course, behind him, he has got Kevin Morville too far behind either in the Super Venturi. So Tucson On the hard tyres, of course, it's really Barbakov, Sevet, and Knapp who are sort of out of sequence with everyone else on the different strategy. But a Sevet, of course, crucially with that spin for Ivanov and being hit by Erchan, that puts him back ahead in 6th position. So I wouldn't count Patrick Sevet out just yet. He's only a second behind Gianni Lianos in that battle for 5th, and it doesn't look to be too damaged either.
Yeah, and I think we're really going to see this race develop here. I'm going to be interested to see when we get our first real round of pit stops to see how far those medium runners are able to go. A little bit of a slide there, maybe intentional. I'm not quite sure how you drive these cars on this game, but as we run down into the Radeon on the Eau Rouge and Radeon complex, potentially a move on for Oldenmenger, getting the tow just 0.3 of a second behind. You're going to see the DRS activation zone here now. So opening it up, rear wing open, massive kilometers an hour advantage. And easy as you like down into the comp.
There we go. So Tom Oldenmenger, who, as I already said earlier, started 11 places behind Patrick Sevet, is now right behind him on the road. As here we go, that looks like Tucson making a move on Vagapov with the DRS, and Kevin Morville left agonizingly short, didn't quite have the overspeed to overcome Vagapov himself, and has now got Daniel Miganov for company behind him. So there's this furious fight here to stay in the top 15 between all of these guys, and neither of them giving each other an inch, but for the most part keeping it relatively clean after some of the incidents that we saw earlier. And up front though, Erchan is now starting to pull away from Barbakov, which is crucial to his race, because we don't know if Erchan's going to escape penalty for the incident with Ivanov. I'm sure Ivanov will be pushing him for one and reporting him afterwards, but certainly Erchan needs to make hay while the sun shines and do the best job he can to at least win it on the road, and that would still be a big achievement for the Turkish driver.
Yeah, and there's no hard feelings here when you protest drivers. You know, all of the drivers are like, oh, why do you protest me or anything? It's fair game. Everyone's going to protest everyone. And at the end of the day, it's up to the race stewards to see what they determine who's at fault and what penalties need to be applied. Got your two Netrex GP cars here, running line astern, 4th and 5th, a good showing at the moment, and potentially just keeping these tyres in a good position, able to work themselves a little bit up the order.
Yeah, and of course they've got the more experienced Danny Van Den Eet, who of course drove pro for Netrex last season, ahead of Lianos, who's moved up from Academy the season before that he drove for. So they probably want to keep them in that order. I was just thinking there might be some team orders if Lianos' pace is that little bit better. But here we go, Patrick Sevet under attack from Oldenmenger, who he's fighting with in the championship. Oldenmenger uses the DRS to overcome the Royal Blue driver and get himself into the top 6. So Oldenmenger, his typical rise through the order in full effect here, and Leonov hanging on to the coattails of the pair of them.
Yeah, and like you say, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. And yeah, another one of your Netpex Grand Prix drivers. I remember in the first round, it was Ivanov and Leonov. I was always getting mixed up. So thankfully, they're a little bit further away from each other this time, but not too far. So might get that mixed up again. Thankfully, the paint schemes are quite different now. So
well, luckily,
yeah.
Ivan Leonov has Ivan written on top of his helmet, whereas Viktor Ivanov has Ivanov written, I think, on his. So not confusing at all.
Yeah, exactly. So we better be making sure we're not getting any names wrong here. But yeah, we're about to start lap 10 here of this race. It seems to have gone by fairly quickly. The driver seems to have calmed down a little bit from that flurry. Not too many laps to go. And I think as they all settle into their run plans, it'll be interesting to see who's underlying a lot of pace, whether that medium starts to drop off, and when our first round of pit stops is truly going to be.
Yeah, because obviously those on the mediums are going to have to come in first, so they could end up undercutting a lot of the people around them. That's really going to help Barbakov potentially catch a little bit back up to Erchan. He's still just under a second behind, but it's 7 tenths, of course, you have to be in to get DRS to be within the car in front in order to get that. And of course, for Sevet, he'll be hoping that he can pit soon and get on some fresh tyres. He looks like he was really struggling against Oldenmenger there. As we see the two Netrexes, they see Oldenmenger catching them, and they're starting to panic here. Van Den Eet and Liano swapping positions.
Yeah, and also a Boycott making a move there on Levanov. So now, now we've got the two drivers that inevitably will mix up the names of next to each other on track and potentially racing soon as... Oh, is that a crash in the... What's happened there? Someone's lost their front wing? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, just on the... Oh, it's rear wing missing there from one of the net... Is that one of the Netrex is there? I think it might be Lianos in trouble.
Yeah, and I'm not
so...
sure what's happened there.
He's lost both wings, I think. So let's have a look at the replay, Will. This looks fatal for Lianos' chances.
Yeah, so just coming through the corner there, it's going to be on the curb, isn't it? Yeah, and just, wow, these cars are so sensitive. Just grounding out on the curb, and like you say, no rear wing, no front wing. That's absolutely detrimental to his race.
Yeah, big shame for Gianni Lianos, because Netrex really needed those points there, and in fact, he won't be able to continue in the race. So another victim is claimed by Spa-Francorchamps. Still not as brutal as the Academy race, where I think 15 drivers were involved in the incident at the start, or was it 14? But it was still a ridiculous amount when somebody had an engine failure going up the hill through Radion. Essentially, nobody could avoid them in time. But anyway, Erchan continues to lap consistently up front, although he's been closed in just a little bit by Barbakov on this particular lap. But the big battle here we're watching at the moment, Tucson trailing Peter Knapp, who from near the back of the grid has done very well to get up to 11th place behind Cat Pinizio. And Tucson, very, very experienced, tends to run contra strategies. So, well, he's the one who often have a punt on the soft tyre and do 2 stints on the soft tyre rather than 1 stint on maybe the hard or medium to try and gain ground in the race with lap times rather than just staying out and gaining track position. As we see Oldermenga through on Danny Van Den Eet. So Van Den Eet, without his teammate to protect him, is very vulnerable indeed, and Oldermenga doesn't need a second opportunity. He's up to 4th now, so Oldermenga, could he even get himself into victory contention here? Such is his pace.
Yeah, absolutely superb race pace at the moment from Oldermenga. I think he's caught the leading group by about 1.6 seconds since I last really had a good look at it. So Oldermenga on the charge, using that race pace to his advantage.
There's a wheel.
A stray wheel that hopefully is from a car from earlier, but you never know. We might be getting another replay from Cas behind the scenes.
I think it was just Lianos' wheel, hopefully.
It's just a wheel, just chilling there, just vibing. Yeah, why not?
He hasn't got anywhere else to be, like on a car or anything. But anyway, Kevin Morville now really trying to put pressure on Peter Knapp then, who has now been passed, I think, by Matt Tucson on this lap. So that shows you how quickly it can all change. And Vagpov, we saw gaining ground so quickly early on, now sort of stuck at the back of this train as we cut back to Barbakov, who's now been overcome by Sergio Fletcher in the valley on the hard tyres. So to my mind, this is turning rapidly into a 3-horse race, Will, between Erchan, Fletcher and Oldermenga, all on the hard tyres. Because I think Barbakov is just losing quite a bit of time on the mediums at this phase.
I really don't feel like the experiment, whatever it was, from the Royal Blue cars going on those mediums really has helped in any way. Maybe from practice they found that it was able to give them an advantage early on in the race that they were able to hold, but when we've got such a large ability to tow, able to make some moves here as we watch. I think that's maybe even a let-off from Levanov to make sure he just lets Ivanov by without finding anything. Pretty smart move to do to make sure you're not losing any time in the race. But like we're saying, I think maybe in principle, in practice, running laps, that medium was beneficial. But when we've got so much slipstream, so much ability to follow here in these new FSR cars, I just think it's not paying off for them.
Joshua Hamilton in the chat, by the way, he commented earlier, this race has not been short of content, and of course he's the man that Arda Erchan has effectively taken over from this season, so I bet he's not unhappy at all to see that car, his teammate who he's very good friends with, doing extremely well in this race then. But Ivanov, as you say, crucially gaining ground and now starting to catch back up to Oldermenga and co. Next target, of course, will be Wesley Bukow, a second up the road. So Bukow, now the lead Iris, needs to keep the NX27 driver behind to keep that place in the team's championship, of course.
Yeah, and obviously with the rounds going less and less, right, this season, only 3 after this till the end of the year, you've got to start thinking about where you are in the championship and what you need to do. Is that a spin? Was that Oldermenga in the background?
No, I think that was Miganov.
No, it wasn't.
So inexperience showing there, sadly, for Daniel Miganov. And that's dropped him right off the back of the train as we see pit stops coming. So it's the Royal Blues in of Barbakov and Sevet. Then hopefully they don't have to share a pit box there, because that's pretty disastrous for Sevet if so. But that is an indication they were only able to do 13 laps then on the mediums. They will luckily now be able to switch to the hard tyre and gain the benefit of that as we see Bukat and Van der Neet squabbling ahead of Ivanov, and Ivanov may even get the double toe here and go past both of them. Wow, that's brilliant racecraft then from the Bulgarian, and he's going to drag Ivan Leonov with him. Wow.
Yeah, and that's what you were saying. Leonov took that smart decision to make sure that he didn't lose much time letting Ivanov past, obviously recognizing that he was the faster driver and now able to fight for that 5th place on the road. Of course, maybe some things to change once pit stops have been taken into account. However, like you say, those Royal Blue cars into the pits, clearly on a defined run plan, and be interesting to see what tyres they switch onto now and what they're able to do in the second half of the race.
Yeah, the wheel is now just a feature of the runoff at Pujon. But part of the legend as well, Francorchamps, I guess now. But Tucson has also been able to get past Cat Panizio then. So that's great news for Ground Effect then, with their lead driver down in 18th, having suffered a lot of time from that early incident. Matt Tucson is doing the business on the hard tyres. Unfortunately, 11 seconds then to Van der Neet ahead of him, so it's going to be difficult for Tucson to regain too much ground. But a top 8, I think, would be a very, very good result, a best result of the season, in fact, for him so far. As meanwhile, up front now, Chan is slowly being caught by Fletcher, but the lap times between the pair pretty similar. It's Oldenmenger that's the danger man, and Fletcher actually pits before either of them, so that puts Oldenmenger up to second.
And our drivers there just exiting Blanchimont, almost spinning. I think 2 of them there, just getting on the curbs, just showing how close to the edge these drivers really are. Potentially running pretty low wing settings at the rear, just running it so low downforce, such a low kind of high speed trim that it just makes these cars potentially very hard to drive.
Oh no!
Contact between Sever and I think that was Morville there, and that could be a potential penalty for Sever, our driver in 3rd in the championship.
Yeah, so our pole sitter, more woes then. He pit for another set of mediums and immediately gets into an incident with the Super Venturi then. That was just, he saw there was a gap at La Source, went from a little bit too far back, he committed too early and couldn't get out of it. That's what happened there,
I think it was just a kind of a situation where you're obviously pricking your own braking point. I don't think there was any form of intention for a move. I think Sever obviously dives his nose to the inside to kind of show that Mulder was there, and I think we've also had an issue for Tucson, unfortunately, running his best place of the season so far, but having it off. We're watching now down through the
That must be Barbakov he's fighting with. He just couldn't get out of that. There just wasn't enough space at that point when they got pinched there, and he nearly got hit as well by Sevet as well when he rejoined.
Yeah, and easy to do. I think once you ground out on that curb, you say that rejoin was very, very close, but just
might have a look at that one, but hopefully Matt Tucson gets away with that, because I think he saw the car come upon him. He knew he was in a dangerous spot and just wanted to get out there, I think.
Yeah, I think obviously when you've been spun, the instant reaction for yourself is, I need to get back going. So you maybe don't necessarily think about what you're doing straight away too quickly, but it happened. Move on with the race. Tucson's not lost too many positions and is certainly able to make his way back up the order. You're watching your race leader here. Was watching your race leader. We go back to Leonov and back to Erskine. And like you're saying, Oldenmenger kind of able to break down that time a little bit. 1 or 2 tenths a lap, kind of breaking that gap down a little bit. I think over a course of the race stint, maybe we'll be able to get into that sort of 1 second window, 7 tenths for the DRS, like you say. So interesting to see what happens at the front of the field here. But as we move on from this race, 15 laps gone, almost at the halfway point. Interesting to see what the second half of this race has to offer.
Yeah, and I think what you were saying earlier about the car struggling on the curbs on exit and running quite low rear wings, I think also the tyres wearing does not help in that equation whatsoever. And that's why we're seeing so many difficulties for so many drivers then. But Ivanov now promoted up the order through the pit stops into 3rd as we see Daniel Miganov battling away with Cameron Roger, who's trying to recover from his incident earlier on where he lost the front wing on the opening lap. But for me, this race, Royal Blue, with their alternate strategy, it's put them back into the pack and they've just found themselves getting in both cars into incidents. I think it's really turned against them, and the championship leaders in the team's championship really can't afford to have that happen to them, because this is suddenly opening it up for Burst, opening it up for NX27, and maybe even Iris if Bukout can also stay out of trouble.
Certainly something that kind of comes from, just trying something in practice and then in actual effect it doesn't really work. Like you say, it could have yielded better race times. However, when you get into the nitty gritty, the racing, everyone's in the slipstream fest, that advantage that you might be able to build up when you're in clean air over someone, suddenly, when you've got a lot of draft effect in play, it doesn't quite work out. Roger has had a good start to this race after that incident, because, I remember him coming out about 45.5 seconds back from the lead of the race, still only about 47 seconds back, so certainly able to hold good pace. Just unfortunately, with that early stop and that time loss, it's very, very hard for him to make up the ground.
Yeah, it means he has to do something pretty crazy with the strategy, essentially. But I don't think he was able to get the mediums out of the way in that opening stint when he lost the front wings. So he might have to pit onto mediums a bit later on, as we look at Kevin Morville pitting and dropping to the back of the field in 17th. But here's Ivanov then, desperate then to close in on Oldenmenger. And I think I sort of feel Fletcher having to stop so early. I think the tyre wear on that Valet has really... Again, them having to pit so early is not ideal, because whilst Fletcher is well within the pit window, he's going to come out ahead. When the others pit, he'll have no tyres left to fight with. They'll be breezing by on the Kemmel Straight, presumably.
Yeah, and that's obviously something that you need to take into account when you're doing your strategy, kind of almost being adaptable throughout the length of the race. And it's interesting, really, because I do believe Ivanov is probably our fastest driver here this evening, and has been throughout the majority of the season. We've not seen him finish lower than 4th, and you certainly would expect him to finish up inside that top 3 today. It just depends whether he can break down that gap and really get on to our leading pair.
But certainly the championship leader has not had things his own way, and Tom Oldenmenger has been the big beneficiary so far, with all the other title rivals seem to have tripped over one another. And even see Leonov starting to be dropped a little bit by Ivanov. Oh, so personal best last lap, I believe, for Ivanov, which is great news for him in his quest to hunt down Tom Oldenmenger. So Erchan, is he going to be hoping that Oldenmenger and Ivanov fight each other? Because, of course, they're fighting for the championship, and he essentially is not, unless he wins all the remaining 3 races. And even then, it might fall a little bit short, I think. But Erchan has got to fancy his chances of... they won't be worried about me because I'm not a factor in their championship, is what he's thinking.
Yeah, well, only racing 3 of our 5 races so far this season for Erchan, his best finishing being 8th place. In this position, he's in a great position at the moment. Half the race is now gone into the second half. Certainly has a little bit less pace, lying the likes of Ivanov and Oldenmenger, but potentially when we jump onto a new tyre, that can change. We're maybe able to see another new victor here in Pro, but there's plenty of time left in this race, and I'm sure we'll see many twists to the tail.
Yeah, Peter Knapp there, passing Cameron Roger for 13th. I did make a silly pun about Peter Knapp's name, and I apologise there because he was absolutely on it there, and took full advantage of that DRS. And Matt Tucson, who's also pit in the not too recent past, is going to be all over the back of Cameron Roger. And this is, again, a consequence of Roger having to run longer on those harder tyres. And he hasn't got the track position to really take advantage of it. So he's kind of a sitting duck, really, for Knapp and Tucson at this point.
Yeah, and that obviously will... It's something that you have to deal with, I think. And it's something that maybe you take into account. You don't want to lose too much time fighting battles that you can never win. So sitting there, taking the decision, kind of just realising what you need to get out of the race and where you need to be is really important to minimising time loss. And it'll be interesting to see how that is managed over the coming laps and when we'll see pit stops.
Yep. So we are getting to that point on lap 18 then, where we are sort of approaching half distance, aren't we? Because 15 times 2 is 30, and then a few extra laps. Yeah, it's about half distance now, isn't it? So seeing some on-the-fly maths. But here we go. Tucson is going to have to wait until Kemmel Straight then for a run at Cam Roger then. And our excellent commentator, very, very tidy drive. He put in a very good drive at Imola before the fuel-saving issues came into effect. He was fighting for that 4th or 5th position. And Tucson, after his little incident earlier with Barbakov, desperate to gain ground on those medium tyres. And it's not going to be particularly difficult with the DRS wide open. Nothing that Cameron Roger can do, and he sensibly keeps to the left and carries on with his race, trying to lose as minimal time as possible.
Yeah, and that's kind of just what the aim is now. And yeah, moving forward, Roger obviously hasn't done all the rounds of this season, done the last 3 and showed pretty well. So, sometimes you get these incidents, these issues when you fail to qualify maybe as well as you can. It can put you in the mix. And like you say, sometimes stuff doesn't go your way, but it's important to learn from these scenarios, kind of progress, kind of take into account what you've figured out from each race and move on to help yourself improve in the future. Looking a little bit further forward in the field, got Fletcher in this battle pack with Boykout, Nealt and Barbakov, and potentially I believe Barbakov now on newer tyres, so we could see some big changes here in the order.
Fletcher as well, of course, having pit about 5 laps ago, sorry. It was 4 laps ago when I started saying that sentence and they crossed the start-finish line. But here we go. Fletcher needs to make sure he doesn't make the move too early here up Eau Rouge, because he might just sort of be in a bad position when they get to the top of Radion and onto the Kemmel Straight. But here we go. He's timed it well. Nothing that Wesley Bucat can really do. And indeed, looks like Van der Niet is going to get involved in this as well. Is he going to try and make a double move on Fletcher? And then Barbakov gets involved as well. Very late move, just enough space there with Wesley Bucat. Bucat did very well to avoid collision there, and they all get through.
Yeah, and this medium tyre is clearly working all right, but I just don't feel like it's working well enough to benefit being on it for the higher amounts of degradation. And for me, if I was looking at these times of the race, I'd be wondering, what lap do I need to get to if I'm on the hard tyre to switch over to the soft? Because if you're able to do the soft tyre, maybe that gives you that just a bit more of an edge of a pace advantage.
I should point out Fletcher pit for another set of hards, whereas Barbakov and Sevitt went for another set of mediums. They've both stuck to the tyres they start on, but a fresh set of them, which is interesting. But anyway, lap times up front then, 150.6 for Erchan, 4 tenths slower than Tom Oldenmenger, but Ivanov continuing to set high 149s, 149.8 last time around. So that's nearly 4 tenths quicker than Oldenmenger himself, and significantly quicker than Erchan. So Ivanov is very much, hasn't given up on this despite the misfortune he's run into in this race. He wants round 2 with Erchan, I think, and he could well get it.
Yeah, and like you say, going on to another lap now, Oldenmenger brought that gap down to 1.3 seconds. Definitely be getting a faint effect from toe here, and if you're Erchan, you'll be looking back, kind of worrying a little bit about that gap, because you've got 15 laps to go. We've got a pit stop phase to go for our leading trio, and it does make you wonder what we're going to really see here in terms of strategies. If I was Erchan, I'd be wanting to still be leading by the time we get to that pit stop phase. As if that's not the case, then you can only see really Oldenmenger or Ivanov running away with it.
Yeah, Barbakov clears Van der Niet, but the problem Barbakov and Sevitt have got is they've got to make another pit stop for hards at some point or other, or potentially the softs, if that's the purpose of running mediums constantly in this race. Maybe they just really don't like the hard tyre, is what I'm reading out of this from Royal Blue at the moment. But Van der Niet unfortunately demoted there, and him and sort of Leonov doing well to stay in this race and score some points for Netrax. As here we go, Peter Knapp now closing on Matt Tucson for 13th then. 2 cars on the medium tyres, of course, because Royal Blue just went all in on the medium strategy here. And but it looks like it's not paying out at the moment, as you have said so consistently, Will. And there we go. There's Wesley Bucat, I think, getting back ahead of Patrick Sevitt there on the exit of Piff Paff Fania chicane.
Yeah, and will be a chance there for Sevitt to be able to fight back. So as we see the toe effect down through towards Blanchimont, a corner that we've seen 2 cars crash at already. Hopefully I've not jinxed anyone.
In come the leaders, Erchan and Oldenmenger.
Going to be interesting to see now what tyres they do choose to go on to. Ivanov's got the chance to really push now, as we also see Bocart, I think, into the pit lane as well.
There we go. So Erchan emerges just ahead of Oldenmenger, crucially for him. And both of them switching to the medium tire then. Ivanov, interestingly, stayed out as I hear the pair emerge right behind Patrick Sevet then. So Ercan and Oldermenger have got to clear Sevet quickly and make sure they rapidly make sure that they don't get overcut by Ivanov potentially if Sevet holds them up.
Well, this can be a really key opportunity now. So if you're in Ercan's point of view, if you can clear these cars quickly, it might allow you to open up that gap to Oldermenger, as maybe he could struggle getting through on these cars as well. So it gives you that chance, rather than just running out by yourself, pumping in constant lap times, to potentially open up a gap that you really will need going into these last 14 laps of this race. And it is the chance for Ercan to be able to maybe retain this chance at a win.
Yeah, I think Victor Ivanov was watching Thomas Smith in the Academy race, where he just waited ages and ages before pitting for mediums near the end, and then used the fact that his tyres are so much fresher than his rivals to just breeze past them despite coming out behind them. So I wonder if that's the strategy for NX27 and Ivanov here. He's a canny man, the Bulgarian, always seems to get the strategy about spot on for him. And it's very rare you see NX27 and Ivanov outsmarted on strategy, but it has happened. Moynier was able to do it in Montreal, and it happened at Silverstone as well with the two burst cars and Zalagianis. But here comes Ercan then, all over the back of Sevet on the old mediums then, and Ivanov is in.
Yeah, that's also smart though from Ercan. Not making that move on Sevet, I think, is a smart play, because inevitably, if you're going into the bus stop there making the move, you'll just having to be fighting off Sevet down into turn number 1. We see Ivanov exiting the pit lane now, as we just saw our effective race leaders go through, and I would definitely expect to see Ercan be making a move down this straight. So what he's doing there, I think, is breaking the toe a little bit, just stop that run, stop catching too quickly into the straight. Going to have still a bit of toe as you open the DRS, able to move. I know it's going to be crucial now. Will Oldermenger be able to pass Sevet before the next corner?
Oh, here we go. It's do or die for Tom Oldermenger. Side by side with Patrick Sevet he goes, and room is given. So crucially, Tom Oldermenger is not going to be held up by the Royal Blue for the rest of the lap, and he can stay right in the back of Arda Ercan. Meanwhile, Victor Ivanov has lost ground by pitting later, but he has got the fresher mediums, and now just has to hope he pushes like crazy and doesn't get held up too much by Patrick Sevet or indeed Stoyan Barbakov, who is about 7 seconds up the road from Ercan. Meanwhile, Sergio Fletcher, by the way, has got into the lead, but he definitely has to make another stop because he has not used the medium compound tire in this race, or the softs indeed. Either of those would be legitimate to get him to the end.
Yeah, and that's so important for Oldermenger. That's potentially race winning decision there, or ability to make that move. And I think stuff and key moments like that is what ends up calling these close races. Ercan, still your effective race leader, if we are so to believe that the other two do still need to stop, which at least Fletcher definitely does. And they both definitely do, because they've both chosen the same set of tyres twice. So your effective race leader, Ercan, is going to be trying his best now to maintain or open that gap, and which I think he kind of has done for the majority of this lap.
Yep, we cut back then to Bukout, trying to get himself back ahead of Van der Niet, of course. So the strategies are playing out here. So Wesley Bukout hit quite recent. Oh, is he fastest lap of the race from Arda Ercan, with Tom Oldermenger only setting his own fastest best lap of the race, 1:48, but Ercan's at 1:47.7. So really, Ercan has sort of turned the wick up now that he needs to, now that there's pressure from behind, and couldn't have come at a more opportune moment. But Bukout, as I was saying, he's on 2 lap old mediums, whereas Van der Niet is, I believe, on 1 lap old mediums. So actually, the tire life is pretty even. It's really just a DRS battle here, with potentially a bit of energy deployment at play as well. Bukout just being kept at bay at the moment, with Van der Niet, a very canny campaigner, doing enough to hold the Dutchman at bay.
Yeah, and like you say, battle for the outer echelons of the top 10. Interesting to see kind of what the strategies are, where they're using their batteries. It's not really been that clear to us where people have kind of been deploying the batteries, but I do imagine it is from low-speed corners, particularly onto these longer straights that we do have here this evening. And as this race develops and gets into the latter stages, it really is interesting.
Oh, no!
And that's round. Round for Boyko. Does he hit the wall? Oh, my word.
That was quite the save from Wesley Bukout. He loves to live dangerously, and following in the wake of Van den Eek, just completely lost her front downforce. End up just going straight on there, sliding across, and just about able to save it in time, but a thousandth of a second later, and I think that could have been curtains for him.
Millimeters, absolute millimeters from the wall there for Boca. And despite that not doing good things for his tyres or anything, it looked really cool, and I'm sure it'll look great on his Instagram account.
Yeah, I'm sure Loic Moynier, who's already had to retire from this race in an accident of his own, is had a bit of a brown trousers moment watching his teammate, the sole remaining team. Or actually, no, Axel Hu is still going as well down in 15th, but one of the two sole remaining Team Iris cars that desperately need to bank these points, nearly going bye-bye there. So
looking towards the kind of strategy that we're looking at in this race, Boycott will be looking to kind of come back now from that. I'm not really sure how much that would affect the tyre temperatures, but I certainly don't think it'd be a good thing. But obviously, I think as we watch Boycott here, be interesting to see kind of how he builds it back up.
Indeed, and well, let's also not forget, keep our eyes on the battle up front. Victor Ivanov has set a 148.2, Tom Oldenmenger 148.5, Erchan 148.3. So the tire life's pretty similar, although Ivanov, I think, has got 2 laps younger mediums. So when he gets into the closing stages, if Erchan and Oldenmenger could drop off the cliff, then Ivanov could still be a big factor here. Potentially, he might be able to win this race after all, but I don't quite see Stoyan Barbakov, even though he's been able to hold track position in this stint on the mediums after the final stop. Him and Fletcher are surely going to make another stop for softs before the race ends, I think. That's surely got to be the strategy from Royal Blue and Valet here.
Yeah, I'd imagine you'd be jumping onto softs, especially with so little laps to go in this race. We look forward now to Victor
And
Ivanov.
Sevet comes in.
Sevet in, yeah. And be interesting to see what tyres he gets onto.
Yeah, 10 laps to go. Can the softs make 10 laps? It's a big gamble, but that's the one that Royal Blue have taken, and surely we're going to see Barbakov in before too long as well. And I think Fletcher would surely love to stay out because the hards could easily make it to the end, but the problem is he's going to get disqualified if he does that, so he surely got to put the softs on with enough time to take advantage out of them, but not too long a stint to the point that he's just crawling around in the last couple of laps. As there we go, Sevet switches to the softs now, so this is surely going to open the floodgates for people pitting for softs in the final few laps, as Peter Knapp also comes in now, presumably to do likewise.
Yeah, and a nice move there from Erchan, able to not really lose too much time, getting that DRS early on in the straight, and really, ever since that battle, we saw that crucial move from Oldenmenger. It's kind of stalled. Oldenmenger's not really been able to hold the pace that Erchan has been able to do, and now that gap opening up to close to 3 seconds from about 1 or so, like about 9/10 maybe it was. This could be big amounts of time that maybe Oldenmenger isn't able to make up, even if he's treating his tyres better in this latter stage of the race.
Yeah, and of course, Ivanov's got, he's only 2 seconds behind now, 2.3. To set a 147.8 last time around, so nearly over a whole second faster than Tom Oldenmenger, who was still 4 tenths quicker than Barbakov, of course, in front of him. But now Erchan is released. It's sort of turning into, this is going to be a battle for second, isn't it, between our two title protagonists, Oldenmenger and Ivanov. And there we go. Fletcher is out of the way, as indeed is Barbakov in the pits. So they're going to put softs on and trying to make their way back up the pack. At the end, they're going to come out about 8th position, I would think, just ahead of Wesley Bukout, I believe. That's the gap, or around Bukout territory. Oh, wow. So, Arda Erchan set 147.4, fastest lap of the race, but Ivanov set a 147.8, fastest lap of his personal best, fastest lap of the race. So, Oldenmenger in the middle was not able to hold the candle to them. I think he got held up a little bit by Barbakov as well, to be fair, 148.9 last time around. But Oldenmenger looking very, very vulnerable then. So it's Burst versus NX27 in the fight for second now. The state of play, it's really kind of settled into the fight, the shape of things in towards the finish then, isn't it?
Yeah, and then looking forward as well, to what we've kind of seen over the last few laps. We're watching Tucson exit the pit lane, battling with Roger potentially, who's been making his little bit of a charge back into this top 10 sort of area. It's really been interesting to see how Ercan has been able to hold this pace so well. And Oldenmenger having that car, I think it was Barbakov in front of him, pit, kind of negated all the benefits he would have got down past after La Source and through Radion Eau Rouge to get that kind of DRS effect. And it is a bit of a nightmare situation. And there's no real pace here for Oldenmenger. He's still losing time to Ercan.
Yeah, he's could it just be saving tires, or I think maybe it's what we saw in qualifying, that the burst just doesn't quite have the pace when it's out in clear air. And now Ivanov is well and truly upon him, and surely going to make a move once they get to Eau Rouge and Radion will.
Yeah, and that's obviously another smart decision by Ivanov, sitting back, allowing him to be able to get on the slipstream down as we go through Eau Rouge and Radion. Getting that toe, building up the speed very, very quickly, potentially going to be passing him before we even get to this DRS point. Up over the hill to the inside, Oldenmenger doesn't fight it, decides that it's not worth the fight. DRS activated now for Ivanov and able to romp away.
There we go. So Oldenmenger, unfortunately, it looks like he might have to settle for third on the podium then. But now Ivanov has got a 4.5 second gap to Ercan, who's very much made hay while he had the opportunity to while the sun shone. And now it's going to be round 2 surely in these final 7 laps or so between Ivanov and Ercan. So Ivanov with the fresher tires by, let's see, 6-lap old tires for Ercan, and I believe 5-lap old tires. So it's actually only a lap's difference, but around Spa, a lap is a long time. So it could really be a case of if Ercan falls off the cliff in the final laps or so, then Ivanov could be able to take advantage and snatch a victory from what looked like the jaws of defeat earlier on when him and Ercan collided. But I think Ercan, judging by the first incident earlier, I think he's going to defend very, very hard when Ivanov catches him, because it feels like with the pace he's got, it's when, not if.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see. I think we'll get a better picture of that over the coming laps, kind of what we kind of see in terms of lap times and that gap closing. And you certainly would bet Ivanov to be able to close it a bit, but will it be enough? Not many laps remaining here as we tick over onto lap 28. Just 7 tours of the circuit left for the end of this race, and it's a second quicker for Ivanov. Obviously having that advantage of the DRS in tow up the Camel Straight, which must have been worth at least half of that time, but certainly a good bit of pace that he's able to show to try and maybe catch the back of Ercan.
And also crucial to defend from any DRS attack that Tom Oldenmenger may be able to mount against him. And indeed, I don't think Oldenmenger gets DRS. He does not. So that means Ivanov is safe. He doesn't have to worry about what's happening behind. He can focus completely on the road ahead and closing that gap inexorably to Arda Ercan. And let's keep in mind, TX3 have not won in Pro before. I think, like you said, their best result is sort of a top 6, top 8 for Ercan, Vagapov, and Joshua Hamilton earlier in the season. So this would be a big result for them, their first win, regardless of whether it gets taken away in the stewards' room for the incident with Ivanov later. Let's hope it doesn't for Ercan's sake. But certainly the stakes could not be higher for Ercan and TX3 personally. So they will be absolutely desperate to win. And I'm sure TX3's Stefan Koshtry's one of the co-owners there. Then you've got their World Championship team that will be in action later on of Mark Schluter and Janik Bock. They will be cheering Arda Ercan on to victory here because this is very important for the French squad.
Yeah, and I know one of the engineers at TX3 and how absolutely elated he would be to get a win even just in this Pro Series. So it's interesting to see how the latter laps of this race unfold. Ivanov certainly quicker again. I imagine by about 3/10 maybe over the line. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see these ladder laps.
Yeah, 4/10 the gap on that lap. 1:48.5, 1:48.1 for Ercan and Ivanov respectively. And Oldenmenger behind actually went a little bit faster, 1:48.14. But that was, of course, with the aid of the slipstream. And he's able to match the times. Meanwhile, Barbakov sits fastest lap of the race, 1:47.1. as he tries to chase down Vandeney, who's about 6 tenths ahead of him. So the soft runners are starting to make their way back through the order.
Yep, like you say, that's happening now a little bit further back, and maybe we'll see them charge up to the kind of 4th place area, but certainly not fighting for this win. 4/10 a lap, over 6 laps. How much time's that? 2.4 seconds. So it really is on the edge of whether Ivanov can catch here if that pace remains the same.
Yeah, if he can get within 7 tenths on the final lap, then I think realistically Ercan is going to be in trouble. But if Ercan can just stay out of DRS range on the going into the final lap, then I think he might be able to just about hold on. It really is about that 7 tenths gap, I think, and potentially whatever battery power these two have got left in the tank at their disposal.
Yeah, and certainly looks to be like an excellent lap that Ivanov have put together this time by through that middle sector. Just looks to close up that little bit more on our race leader. About to start lap 30, this time by on the line. And certainly I think we're up for a grandstand finish here in your pro race for round number 6 of Formula Sim Racing League.
Yep, not long to go now. Only 5 more laps to go as Arda Ercan crosses the line. That's another one he doesn't have to do. And this is where the tension really rises then. 148.7. So Ivanov was 7 tenths quicker that lap around. 148.0 was Oldenmenga 148.4. So Tom slowly but surely starting to be dropped. But the good thing is he is slowly being reeled in the slipstream of Ivanov to the back of Ercan. So if Ercan has been pushing the tyres a little bit too far and rapidly falls off the pace, then maybe there might be a chance for Oldenmenga. But it really depends how things play out. Here comes Patrick Sevet fighting with Wesley Bukout for 8th place. We're seeing the fresh soft tyres versus the slightly more worn mediums. And here we go. It's not even going to be a contest. Down there, route they go, side by side. And is Sevet going to wait for DRS? Oh, that's very, very sensible, actually. Let's not run the risk too much there after everything that's happened to Sevet so far in this race. And he tucks in. Surely Wesley Bukout on the inside is going to be a bit of a sitting duck. And indeed, the duck sits. Around the outside goes the Royal Blue. And into 8th place he goes. Yeah,
nice little move there from Sevet. Unfortunately, though, his day just really hasn't turned out as well as he would have liked. We're looking back to Neat, and we'll be seeing whether he is able to fend off Sevet, who will charge pretty hard, but probably not enough time left to close that gap. I believe he's just been passed by Barbakov, who will be charging forward and, as we know, has the fastest lap of the race.
Exactly. So Barbakov, I think 3 seconds up the road is Sergio Fletcher, who's 1.6 behind Leonov. Oh! And who is that? That must be Cameron Roger and Matt Toussaint coming into trouble at Les Combes there. And Cameron Roger sent around, which really sums up his race. It has been not the easiest one for him, has it? It's sort of a reverse of Imola, where Oldenmenga had a really difficult race and Cameron Roger was running up front, and now it's the other way around here at Spa between the two best teammates.
Certainly would be good for the team's championship if they could both have a good day at the same time, but I'm sure they won't be doing it intentionally. We've got a replay here from our wonderful director Cas, having a little look back at what might have happened up through Eau Rouge and down the Camel Straight to Le Combe. Going to have a bit of a DRS effect here, and I imagine it's probably a lunge from Toussaint. He's going to close up really, really quickly. Defensive manoeuvre from Roger round the outside. Whoa, they just get locked together. It's really, really tight one, because I feel like Roger left a good amount of space. It was very close, obviously, but just the way the corner then goes, they get their wheels locked together and unfortunately sends them both into a spin.
And as Roger is being spun around there, Peter Knapp did very, very well in his Royal Blue to avoid them and get himself up into 13th then. So he's on the soft tyres as well. So that's 2 cars he doesn't have to pass, which is great news for him. But yeah, up front, lap times, it's 148.5 for Ercan. Ivanov's charge starting to slow a little bit, only 3 tenths quicker on this occasion. The gap 2.1 seconds. So nearly equidistant between Ercan, Ivanov, and Oldenmenga, who's 1.9 behind the Bulgarian.
Certainly we'll see Ercan be getting his best result of the season so far, but will it be the first loser or will it be the winner? We'll have to wait and see. We're going to be starting lap 32. The time's ticking down on this race that has just flown by so quickly. It seems just a matter of time ago where we had all that carnage in the opening few laps, and reasonably, ever since, we've seen our drivers be pretty well behaved.
Yeah, exactly. And that has been great to see that we are going to see a fight to the absolute finish between our championship leader and a very, very promising young talent who, of course, was on pole at Silverstone. Arda Ercan sadly got disconnected. We didn't see what he would have been able to do there. At Spain as well, he was fighting in the top 6 when he came into pits and unfortunately fell through the floor. But we won't remind the rFactor 2 developers of that one. But wow, this is a great opportunity for Ercan, as you say, to finish on the podium. But how dearly he would love to come away with the win here. And he's been doing everything right so far. The only thing now is that Tucson, who spun earlier, now has to be lapped by the group. Or is this Kevin Morville, sorry, that they're having to lap here? And that could really impede Ercan and play into the hands of Ivanov.
Well, actually, kind of beneficial, I would say, for Ercan, because Ercan was able to get toe down the back straight. We saw him activate that DRS on the timing tower on the left. And in fact, probably gained him 2-3 tenths of a second that he wouldn't have had otherwise. So that is very beneficial and could be absolutely crucial towards the end of this race. This gap has been pretty stable now, looking towards the end of the second sector throughout this entire lap due to that bit of advantage gained through having that DRS. And another lap left for Ercan to be kind of safe for the time being. Will he have the pace to remain ahead for these final few laps?
It's nip and tuck, but I don't think Ivanov is quite doing enough at the moment. Last lap, he was 4 tenths quicker. Here they come onto the start-finish straight then to look at the lap time. They visibly look a lot closer. 1.5 seconds is the gap. And let's see, 148.2. So Ercan fighting back here, actually. And I believe that was a pretty similar time from Ivanov then. So they've started to converge a bit here. Ercan has really kept a bit of pace in reserve for exactly this crucial moment when he needed it well.
Yeah, and we've seen these track temperatures drop a bit, which is potentially helping our race leader, who did pit 1 or 2 laps before Ivanov. So track temperatures have dropped a little bit, helping out on tyre wear. Looking back at Tucson here, who looks to have been having a battle with Knapp, and yeah, it will be certainly interesting to see what happens here for the outer echelons of the positions here tonight.
Yeah, every point counts, of course, in the team's championship. Ground Effect not too far behind Royal Blue, but all their hopes rest really with Matt Tucson now that George Zalagianis has sadly, he was about 90 seconds down early in the race after the incident, so understandable that he has called it a day. But it's still, with all the misfortunes for everyone else that seems to have befallen them, there's every chance that Ground Effect could still come away maybe 3rd or 4th in the championship, and with a chance of potentially stealing it off of Royal Blue with their best drivers in 6th and 8th and 13th then. But Matt Tucson then desperate to take that 13th off Peter Knapp, and he's of course got Alex Lahou, who's been a bit quiet in this race, but has somehow come alive in the final couple of laps, hoping to get double slipstream off the pair of them. And Ercan makes a mistake. Ivanov is through into the lead before they go into Blanchimont there, and that's bitter gall for Arda Ercan. Is he going to fight back here into bus stop, Will?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happened. There must have been something. Maybe Paul Frere. Let's have a look on the replay, as we might be having a move back.
Yeah, I think
down,
so.
Down the straight, but we'll see. Let's have a look. So, yeah, well, we're going to go back to the live pictures just so we don't miss any of these moves. I think we're looking at that replay. So, as we look back, I'm just coming through the normal section, certainly closer than it has been. Maybe the gap about a second through the right there of Campus, then into start below, and yeah, just in general looks like maybe we have a suggestion that there was no battery, potentially just losing a lot of time through that section.
Yeah, there we go. So Viktor Ivanov knew he was close enough, wanted to get the move done as soon as possible, and it's just bolted there. The gap between the two, half a second now, as Ercan struggling then to stay within the DRS, just able to do so for the moment. But you have to say that was a very, very assertive decision there from Viktor Ivanov, just out of curve of Paul Frere, to dump all of that battery and leave the TX free in the dust there. There was nothing. Ercan just didn't see it coming there, and it was a very unorthodox move. But that's the sort of strategic thinking you expect from Viktor Ivanov, and that's why he's leading the championship and indeed this race, looking to make it 2 in a row and 3 wins overall this season.
Yeah, and it just looks now like Ercan's got no battery left, no battery to fight. And unfortunately, although we saw that gap just kind of chipping down, we thought we might have a grandstand finish. It does look like Ivanov is going to take 2 wins on a bounce after winning last time out in Imola.
Yep, only one more lap to go then. And unless Erchan has got something spectacular that he's been saving his battery for, and I think Ivanov is going to pull away here and just hold on to victory. The gap's still half a second, as you see on screen, between the pair. Erchan not going to give up, but it looks now like the decisive move may have already been made. And now it's just a matter of banking that second place, which would still be a brilliant result for him and TX3, as we said. But you can't help but feel he might be just that little bit disappointed now. He's out of DRS range now as well. So Ivanov has just got him covered head to toe, back to front.
Yeah. And I see that being that's how it's going to end. You know, we're on to our final lap here. Very, very little time. Ivanov can clearly dumping all of his battery here on these remaining few laps that are starting to open up. But let's not be too much of a down on the situation. Erchan has drove a fantastic race today, and unfortunately, maybe coming up that little bit short. But however, we must say, very, very good drive indeed.
Yeah, and he's really showing what he's capable of in these races and impressing a lot of people in the FSR paddock. It might not be too long before we see Erchan make a substitute drive in World Championship. Lord knows everyone else in the top 5 in the championship has, apart from maybe George Zalagianis, of course, who was only just recently crowned Academy champion. But anyway, Ivanov looking to really consolidate his hold on this championship. 35 points in the lead already. It's going to be significantly more than that with Oldermenga in third. He's going to gain 10 more points then in the standings. So it's going to be 45 points with 3 races to go. And that's a difficult gap to surmount. I think Ivanov is going to have to... We saw them throw everything at him today. And Ivanov climbed his way back through the field. And it's going to be a well-deserved victory for the Bulgarian. Only one more corner to go. And Viktor Ivanov takes victory here at the Belgian Grand Prix in Spa to make it 2 in a row for NX27. But don't forget Arda Erchan taking an extremely popular second position after a really fighting drive and only just being taken out of the lead with 3 laps left on the clock. Tom Oldermenga takes third. Sergei Fletcher takes his best finish of the season ahead of Ivan Leonov in fourth. And then Barbakov is going to cross the line in 5th on the soft tyres ahead of Danny van der Neet. Patrick Sevet is coming through now, a pole sitter, ultimately finishing down in 8th after a couple of mistakes, unfortunately, cost him. Wesley Bukat is going to finish 9th. And the second valet of Daniel Miganov, who's had we have not talked too much about Miganov, but he's actually had a really, really good race in the top 10 there on his debut, actually, in pro. So big up to Daniel Miganov, really showing what he can do, mixing it with the big boys and finishing in the top 10, which is no mean feat whatsoever, ahead of Kat Benizio, who is no slouch, let's put it that way. And Peter Vagabov is going to come home 12th on his comeback, which will certainly raise his confidence, although I think he would have loved to have been up there with his teammate, but qualifying prevented that from happening. Cameron Roger. What could have been for Cam, really. The incident on the first lap and another one with Tucson really meant that he could do no better than 14th. But still, it's a burst car on the podium, so he will take those points in the team's championship very gladly, I think.
Yeah, and like you say, could have been, should have been, and it's just one of those days. Sometimes in sim racing, it doesn't work out, and you have to pick yourself up as a driver. You have to go out there again, focus for the next round. 10th of September, Temple of Speed, and just get yourself recalibrated, ready to go racing here again in Formula Sim Racing Pro League, and maybe watch the pro race coming on not too later on.
You mean the World Championship? This
World
was the pro
Championship.
race.
There you go. Yeah.
There we go. Peter Knapp is the last man across the line in 15th, ahead of Kevin Morville, who actually set fastest lap of the race on his final lap, 1:46.5. So Super Venturi, always leaving it late to entertainers. But there we go. Confirmation of the results then. So Viktor Ivanov takes his 3rd victory of the season to extend his championship lead to 45 points. That's a colossal haul for the number 63 driver. Arda Erchan, despite bumping into Ivanov, he takes 2nd. So for TX3, we'll be definitely hoping they get to keep that. Tom Oldermenga finishes 3rd for Burst. So another podium appearance for Tom. So that's positive for him considering where he qualified, but he would have hoped maybe to get into that fight for victory. Sergio Fletcher, he will be happy with that 4th place ahead of Ivan Leonov. Stoyan Barbakov takes 6th ahead of Danny Van Der Neet, and then it is our pole sitter Patrick Sevet down in 8th, sadly for him. Wesley Bukow survived that late scare with the wall to finish 9th, and Daniel Miganov on his debut rounds out the top 10 for Valet. Then it's Kak Panizio ahead of Peter Vagapov. Alex Lahou banks crucial points for Team Iris in 13th, as does Cameron Roger for Burst in 14th. Peter Knapp, he finishes 15th ahead of Kevin Morville. And our last finisher, unfortunately, is going to be Matt Toussaint down in 17th after that late collision with Cam Roger. Then George Salagianis, another driver, what could have been for him, because he was in that fight early on before the trio collided. Gianni Lianos, of course, having that his mistake and incident as well. Liam Howard, of course, Lianos did have a presence in the race, missing his rear wheel on the outside of Pujon, of course. But Liam Howard, again, his collision with Salagianis, that really defined his race. And of course, we've got Mirko Mancini and Loic Moinier both retiring in big accidents at the exit of Blanchimont then. So, wow, that was quite a pro race, Will. And you have to say, Ivanov, that was probably his toughest win of the year so far. He definitely earned that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it shows the strength of Ivanov, runaway championship leader, and with just 3 rounds to go here in the Pro Championship, what could happen next? It's certainly looking like Ivanov will be extending his championship lead in the future rounds, but you never know. A late charge from Olden Menga showed great pace today, especially on the hard tyre. Could happen. You never know. But it's been really, really good joining you today, and it's been a fantastic race.
Exactly, and keep your eyes on the Teams Championship as well, because Royal Blue were definitely closed in by NX27 and Burst today, so that makes it very, very close indeed, or much closer than it was anyway. But that's all from us. We'll be, as you said, we'll be back for more pro action at Monza on the 10th of September in 3 weeks' time or so, so don't miss that. But also, crucially, do not miss what's coming up next, our Titanic championship battle in World Championship between Jerne Simoncic and Dennis Jordan, of course, with Dennis Jordan coming in 11 points behind and looking to strike back. So do not miss that. And of course, let's see if Colin Spork, who won in Imola, and Jake Dennehan, who's 3rd in the championship, can get involved as well. But anyway, from me, Edward Hunter, from Will Chadwick, who has so helpfully talked to us and navigated us through all the action, to Cas Rietveld, who's battled all sorts of gremlins behind the scenes to keep the show on the road, to VCO eSports for sponsoring us, also keeping the show on the road, and to you, don't hit the microphone, and to you for watching. I have to say thank you very much to everyone. Tune in for World Championship soon. And thank you very much for watching Pro at Spa-Francorchamps, where Victor Ivanov is your winner.
Hello, I'm Jack Nichols, and welcome to
Who's going to break his 5th world title?
For my Gosby! Oh, he's done it! And
Look at these 2 go!
Itchy Hoy is going to do it! His first victory!
The World Championship is done. What a race it's been!